Former Justice Minister Irwin Cotler is with me now to talk about that. Hi, Mr. Cotler. Very good to see you. Thank you so much for making time for our program today.
Thanks, Patsy. Pleasure always to talk with you.
I was wondering first, basically, what your initial reaction was upon learning what happened in the House of Commons last week.
Well, everyone was disturbed by the fact that the Speaker recognizing as a Canadian hero, as a Ukrainian hero. But to me, the larger question, which was initially ignored, was about how he got into Canada to begin with, and how there was no accountability once he was in Canada. And this raised the larger question about our ongoing failure to bring Nazi war criminals to justice. In fact, the Deschênes Commission contained some important revelations, such as that in 1948, Canada already acceded to a United Kingdom representation to Commonwealth countries, quote, that the time had come to bury the past. This was in 1948, while Holocaust survivors were trying to get into Canada. They already said, let's put an end to any prosecutions of Nazi war criminals. So what then ensued was that we gave sanctuary to Nazi war criminals. And as my late colleague and friend, Professor Irving Abella, put it, that in the aftermath of the Second World War, it was easier to get into Canada if you were a Nazi than if you were a Jew. And once you got in, nobody was brought to justice. The first case, and I appeared in that case, was in 1982. So close to 40 years after the end of the Second World War did we proceed with any initiatives with respect to bringing Nazi war criminals to justice. So this was a failure here of indifference and inaction by successive Canadian governments, the result being that we became a sanctuary for Nazi war criminals, and no accountability then ensued.
Is the impact even wider than that, given the fact that that individual could be recognized as he was? And, I'll admit my own culpability. I heard the Speaker say he fought against the Russians, and I feel now very much like I should have known immediately. And I wonder if that indifference that you mention sort of has permeated society to the degree where so many of us watched that unfold and didn't realize immediately what had happened.
I think it has permeated society. There's a kind of unconscious internalization of this, and so we never realized the extent to which there had been a penetration here in Canada of suspected Nazi war criminals. And we never realized the extent to which justice was not done. And in fact, in 1962, there was a memorandum of cabinet arguing against bringing Nazi war criminals to justice on the grounds, and I quote this, that this would be, quote unquote, pandering to Jewish revenge. And so the idea of bringing Nazi war criminals to justice was described in a cabinet memorandum in 1962 as pandering to Jewish revenge rather than to the imperative of bringing war criminals to justice. And what worries me also is the manner in which this is now being weaponized by the Putin government in order to support their quote-unquote denazification campaign against Ukraine. And so we need to join forces now in terms of justice for Ukraine and accountability for Putin and those in his military and political leadership, and establish now, and Canada should take the lead, to establish an independent international tribunal to bring Putin and the Russian leadership to justice for the crime of aggression in Ukraine. This can bring the Ukrainian and Jewish communities together in common cause, the Canadian community together in common cause, and bring about a measure of justice for victims and accountability for the perpetrators.
As far as other steps that can be taken to sort of start to rectify what did unfold in this country last week, you mentioned the Deschênes Commission. There's part of the conclusion that commission reached has remained sealed all these decades later. There are many different groups this week, Jewish advocacy groups, that are calling for those records to be unsealed. Is that a call that you support?
Yes, I do support that. I've been also calling for that independently from those groups, but I join those groups in calling for that. I think that we need, as it always been said, that sunlight is the best disinfectant. We need to be fully transparent so that we can bring about the necessary understanding of what, in fact, took place, and so that we can secure the necessary justice that has been lacking, and that we can also correct the historical record, and that we can go forward in terms of pursuing justice and not having situations like occurred in the Canadian Parliament, where we inadvertently end up indulging the falsity of history.
Mr. Cotler, I'll leave it there. I appreciate your time and your insights today very much. Thank you.
Not at all. Good speaking with you.